Bellatrix Black first learned the word blood before she properly learned the word love. It was spoken over her cradle, whispered by women in dark silk and men with signet rings, murmured into the drafts of old rooms where even the mirrors seemed to have opinions. Blood was legacy. Blood was law. Blood was the red river that carried all proper names from one century to the next. In the house where she was born, the word had weight enough to silence children. It could close doors. It could open vaults. It could decide whom one might marry, whom one might mourn, and whom one was expected to hate before ever meeting them. Bellatrix absorbed it all as she absorbed everything, fiercely and completely. She had been a child of storms, all black eyes and sudden laughter. Too intense for the nursery, too quick for the governess, too bold for the quiet rituals of a family that prized restraint only when it hid cruelty. The portraits adored her first. They called her bright. They called her ancient. They said she had the face of a witch who would never bend. They were right about that, though not in the way they hoped. At 11, on the night before she left for Hogwarts, the family gathered in the long dining hall under the greenish light of enchanted flames. Cygnus raised a silver goblet and spoke of duty. Druella sat beside him, white throat gleaming with pearls, her expression arranged into the serenity of a queen at a funeral. Andromeda watched with thoughtful, troubled eyes. Narcissa, still small enough to believe in beauty as a form of safety, stood with her hands folded in front of her dress and tried to look older than she was. "To the House of Black," Cygnus said. "To purity, to endurance, to the old ways." Goblets rose around the table. Bellatrix lifted hers, and for one breath she felt the room claim her. The portraits leaned close in their frames. Silver snakes curled along the rim of the family crest. Candles shivered. She imagined her future laid out like a corridor. Hogwarts, Slytherin, a husband from an old family, children named for dead stars, and a lifetime spent guarding a door that led nowhere but backward. Then, from somewhere below the dining room window, there came laughter. It was not refined laughter. It was not careful. It belonged to the Muggle children who sometimes ran through the square after dark when their mothers called them home and they pretended not to hear. Bellatrix had seen them from the nursery. They played with sticks and chalk in one another's sleeves. They fell, shouted, fought, forgave, and returned to the game with mud on their knees. They possessed nothing that the Blacks admired, and yet they seemed to own something no portrait in the house had ever managed to describe. Joy without permission. Bellatrix looked at the goblet in her hand. Wine dark as old secrets trembled inside it. "No," she said. Cygnus did not understand at first. Neither did the portraits. The word was too small to be rebellion, until she set the goblet down hard enough to crack the stem. I said no. A silence opened, deep and cold. Druella's fingers tightened once around her pearls. Andromeda stopped breathing. Narcissa's eyes widened, not with fear exactly, but with a startled recognition that a locked door had just been kicked from its hinges. Cygnus lowered his goblet. "You will explain yourself." Bellatrix felt her heart strike like a fist against her ribs. She was afraid. Later, people would claim she had never known fear, but that was nonsense told by those who mistook recklessness for courage. Bellatrix knew fear intimately. She simply hated being ruled by it. "I will go to Hogwarts," she said. "I will learn every spell they can teach me. I will be better than anyone who thinks old names are magic by themselves. But I will not spend my life hating people because you tell me their blood is wrong." The portraits erupted. Shameful girl. Spoiled creature. Treacherous child. Mud-loving disgrace. Cygnus rose from his chair so slowly that the movement felt ceremonial. "You are a Black." "Yes," Bellatrix said, and the word burned in her mouth. "That is not all I am." Druella's face did not change, but something behind her eyes moved, too quick to name. Perhaps memory, perhaps regret, perhaps only calculation. "You are 11, Cygnus said. You know nothing. Then why are you afraid of what I think? Andromeda made the smallest sound, almost a gasp. Narcissa reached for her sister's sleeve and missed. The house itself seemed to lean toward Bellatrix. The serpent tapestries shifted. The flames lengthened. The old family magic, tied into the bones of the place, recognized defiance even when the living family did not. There had been rebels among the blacks before, though their names were spoken only as warnings. Their portraits had been removed, their records scorched, their rooms locked. But magic remembered what pride forgot. Cygnus struck the table with his palm. The silver jumped. You will learn obedience. Bellatrix smiled then, not because she was amused, but because she discovered in that instant that refusal had a taste, and it was sweeter than wine. No, she said again. The word rang through the ancestral hall and climbed the stairs ahead of her. It entered the nursery where she had once slept beneath embroidered constellations. It slipped into the library where books on noble lineage gathered dust like grave ash. It passed the room where Narcissa would later cry into her pillow because she loved her sister and feared for her. It found Andromeda in the corridor after dinner, trembling not from shock but from a wild, impossible hope. You shouldn't have done that, Andromeda whispered when she caught Bellatrix near the landing. Bellatrix looked at her younger sister and saw, behind all that gentleness, a mind already questioning the same walls. Probably not, she said. They'll punish you. They already have. They raised me here. That made Andromeda laugh, though she clapped a hand over her mouth at once. The sound transformed the corridor. For a moment, Grimald Place was only a house, not an altar. Narcissa appeared in her nightdress at the far end of the hall. She was pale with worry. Bella, she whispered. Please don't make them hate you. Bellatrix crossed to her and touched her cheek, awkwardly tender. Tenderness had not been well taught to her, so she invented it as she went. They can hate me if they like, she said. You mustn't learn to hate yourself. Narcissa did not understand. Not yet. But she remembered. The next morning, the family sent Bellatrix to King's Cross in silence. Cygnus gave instructions. Druella kissed the air beside her daughter's face. The trunks were loaded by a house elf whose ears trembled whenever anyone spoke. Bellatrix noticed. That, too, was new. Once she began seeing chains, she saw them everywhere. At the barrier between the ordinary world and the hidden one, Bellatrix paused. Muggle families hurried around them with newspapers, luggage, crying babies, paper cups of tea. A boy with freckles helped his little sister tie her shoe. An old man dropped his ticket and laughed when a stranger picked it up. No one knew the House of Black stood among them like a blade concealed in velvet. Cygnus leaned close. Remember who you are. Bellatrix looked through the barrier, toward the scarlet train waiting beyond. I intend to find out. She stepped forward and vanished. The Hogwarts Express smelled of coal smoke, wet wool, sweets, and escape. Bellatrix had expected to feel triumphant when the train began to move. Instead, she felt the strange ache of leaving a battlefield before the war was done. London slid away in blurred rooftops and gray chimneys. The platform dwindled behind steam. Somewhere in that fading world stood her father with his cold fury, and her mother with her unreadable eyes. Somewhere Narcissa was being guided home, taught by silence that love must be careful. Somewhere Andromeda was already writing, because Andromeda never survived fear without turning it into words. Bellatrix found the letter tucked inside her cloak pocket after the train had left the station. Don't let them make you cruel just because they call cruelty strength. There was no signature. There did not need to be. She folded the parchment carefully, more carefully than she had handled anything in years, and slipped it into the inside cover of her spellbook. At first, no one entered her compartment. That suited her. Other students passed the glass door, looked in, saw the black cheekbones and the black stare, and decided some seats were not worth claiming. Bellatrix stretched like a young panther across the bench and watched the countryside open under a sky full of bruised clouds. Then the door slid aside. A thin boy stood there in robes too large at the wrists. His hair hung dark around a pale face, and his eyes had the defensive sharpness of someone who expected mockery before greeting. "Everywhere else is full," he said. Bellatrix glanced at the empty seats. "That seems unlikely." "It is what I'm saying." That amused her. "Then, sit." The boy sat opposite and placed his battered bag beside him as if daring her to comment on it. She did not. Poverty was not interesting to Bellatrix. Shame was. She could smell it on him, bitter as potion smoke, and she disliked the way it had taught him to hold his shoulders. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Severus Snape." "Bellatrix Black." His expression changed at once. Everyone's did. Recognition, calculation, a quick inventory of everything the name was supposed to mean. He did not bow to it, though. That won him a measure of her approval. Before either could speak again, a girl with copper hair appeared at the door, cheeks flushed from searching the train. "There you are," she said to Severus, then noticed Bellatrix and faltered. Bellatrix waited. She had seen that hesitation before, not from fear of her personally, but from fear of whatever verdict might come next. The girl's robes were new, but plainly bought with care rather than extravagance. Her eyes were bright. Her chin lifted a fraction. "This is Lily Evans," Severus said, too quickly. "She's a witch," Bellatrix interrupted. Lily blinked. Severus looked braced for an insult that did not arrive. "I was going to say my friend," he muttered. "Then say that first, next time." Something like surprise passed between them. Lily sat down, still wary, but curiosity was already overcoming caution. Bellatrix admired that. Curiosity was hunger with better manners. For an hour, they talked in uneven bursts. Severus knew more curses than any child should. Lily knew almost nothing of the magical world, and asked questions with a boldness that would have had a black child corrected before dessert. Bellatrix found herself answering. Not gently exactly, but honestly. Yes, ghosts existed. No, all portraits were not wise. Most were unbearable. Yes, some families believed Muggle-borns did not belong. No, Bellatrix did not care what those families thought, despite belonging to one of the worst. Lily studied her. Why not? Bellatrix looked at the rain. Because if a belief needs children frightened into keeping it alive, perhaps it deserves to die. Severus stared at her as if she had spoken aloud something he had never expected to hear from a person with polished boots. The compartment door opened again without permission. Sirius Black stood there, chin high, hair already falling handsomely into his eyes, the very picture of family arrogance in miniature. Yet Bellatrix knew him well enough to see the difference between inherited pride and chosen rebellion. Sirius wore insolence like armor because tenderness embarrassed him. "Mother says I'm to sit with family," he announced. Bellatrix arched a brow. "Does she? How enterprising of her, given that she is not on the train." Sirius scowled. He looked at Lily, then Severus, and his face performed the exact little twitch Bellatrix had been taught to make when encountering someone supposedly beneath notice. She hated recognizing it. "Don't," she said softly. He looked back at her. "Don't what?" "Become them because it is easier than becoming yourself." The words struck harder than she intended. Sirius flushed, furious and wounded at once. For a moment, he was not a future rebel or a family disappointment. He was only a boy trapped in a name too heavy for his bones. "I'm not them," he snapped. "Prove it then. Sit down and be civil." Lily's mouth twitched. Severus looked deeply displeased by Sirius' existence, which made Bellatrix suspect the two would either become enemies or brothers in some more complicated language. Sirius sat, mostly because he could not bear being ordered out. By the time the train climbed north into wilder country, the compartment had become a strange little parliament of the unwanted. A black daughter refusing doctrine, a half-blood boy hungry for power, a Muggle-born girl hungry for power, a Muggle-born girl hungry for wonder, and a black son pretending he did not need rescue. Outside, the hills rose under mist. Inside, the first lines of an altered history drew themselves in steam on the glass and vanished before anyone knew to read them. At Hogwarts, the ceiling of the Great Hall burned with stars. Bellatrix walked beneath them with the other first years, and felt hundreds of eyes catch on her name before the hat even touched her head. She could hear the whispers. Black, D, eldest daughter, Slytherin, obviously. Pure blood, obviously. Dark, obviously. The hat dropped over her eyes. Ah, said a voice in her mind. Fire in a house of old oil. How interesting. Do not put me somewhere because of my surname, Bellatrix thought. I never do, said the hat, amused. But surnames leave marks, and yours has carved deep. Ambition, courage, cunning, fury. A great appetite for victory. A dangerous disgust for chains. You could thrive in Slytherin. You could burn in Gryffindor. Ravenclaw would sharpen you. Hufflepuff might heal you if you survived the humility. I want power, Bellatrix admitted. Yes, but what for? She looked down the tables in darkness behind the hat. She thought of the cracked goblet, Andromeda's letter, Narcissa's frightened eyes, a house elf's trembling ears, Lily's lifted chin, Severus' defensive silence, Sirius at the door pretending not to be lonely. To choose, she thought, and to stop others choosing for everyone else. The hat laughed. Not aloud, but like wind through old towers. Slytherin. The table in green and silver erupted. Some cheered because she was a black. Some because she was beautiful. Some because power recognized power and applauded itself. Bellatrix walked to them smiling. She had not been placed among enemies by mistake. She had been placed where the poison lived, and poisons, properly understood, could become antidotes. Slytherin welcomed Bellatrix like a throne welcomes a blade. The older students knew her name before they knew her voice. They made space for her near the hearth, offered her sweets from parcels sent by rich mothers, asked after cousins and uncles and dinners where alliances were arranged between courses. The common room lay beneath the lake, and its windows glowed with a dim green light that made every face seem secretive. Bellatrix liked the room's beauty despite herself. She liked the heavy chairs, the silver lamps, the sense of being hidden beneath the world. She did not like the way some students looked toward the door whenever a first year of uncertain lineage passed by, as if the stones themselves had been offended. By her second week, she understood the school better than many understood it after 7 years. Hogwarts claimed to be a castle of learning, but it was also a kingdom of small cruelties. Blood prejudice did not shout in every corridor. Often it smiled. It sat beside you in class and offered help only to those whose grandparents mattered. It laughed at names. It turned silence into agreement. It taught children to measure one another before they had learned who they were. Lucius Malfoy was the finest example of that smiling cruelty. He was several years older, elegant as winter and twice as pleased with himself. He approached Bellatrix after supper one evening, as though granting an audience. His robes were immaculate, his prefect badge polished, his pale hair tied with a black ribbon at the nape of his neck. "Miss Black," he said, "your family will be pleased to know you have settled among the right sort." Bellatrix looked up from the book she was reading. It concerned defensive enchantments developed by medieval witches during goblin rebellions, and it was considerably more interesting than Lucius. "Will they?" A flicker of irritation crossed his face before manners covered it. "Naturally. You must write to them at once then. I would hate for my father to endure suspense." A few nearby students laughed before realizing Lucius had not given them permission. He smiled thinly. "I had heard you possessed spirit. Only from people who mistake obedience for character. That was the first warning. The second came in charms. when a Ravenclaw boy from a Muggle family mispronounced an incantation and caused his quill to molt feathers across the desk. 2 Slytherins behind Bellatrix muttered a slur under their breath. She turned and looked at them. They looked away, still smirking. "Say it again," she said. One of them, a square-faced boy named Avery, shrugged. "What, black? Don't tell me you've gone soft." Bellatrix's hand closed around her wand. Not drawing it. Not yet. Just reminding the world she had one. "I asked you to say it again." Avery's smirk weakened. "No need to be dramatic. Then stop being dull." The class noticed. Professor Flitwick noticed. Severus, seated 2 desks away, certainly noticed. Lily, near the front, turned in her chair and watched Bellatrix with an expression that was neither gratitude nor fear, but assessment. That mattered more. No hexes flew that day. Bellatrix did not need them. Reputation was a form of magic, and hers began shifting. Not soft. Not safe. Not converted into sweetness. Something worse. From the perspective of those who loved bigotry, dangerous and disloyal to the correct people. Letters came from home in stiff black envelopes. "Your conduct has been remarked upon. You will not embarrass us. The friendships you entertain are beneath you." Each letter carried Cygnus's anger in formal sentences and Druella's caution between them. Bellatrix read them all, burned most, and kept Andromeda's replies hidden in the hollow spine of a book on ancient runes. Narcissa's letters were rarer. They smelled faintly of lavender and anxiety. They said little, but the loops of her handwriting pressed too hard into the parchment. At Christmas, Bellatrix refused to return home. The official reason was study. The true reason was that Hogwarts, with all its faults, had more air in it than the House of Black. Andromeda was not permitted to stay. Narcissa was too young still. Sirius returned home and came back in January with a bruise yellowing near his jaw and a new talent for silence. Bellatrix found him on the astronomy tower after curfew, freezing in shirt sleeves and pretending not to cry. "Did you provoke them?" she asked, because gentleness was still a language she spoke poorly. Sirius wiped his face with his sleeve. "I breathed. That often offends our family." He laughed once, bitterly. Bellatrix removed her cloak and threw it around his shoulders. He stiffened, then clutched it closed as if he hated needing warmth. "You shouldn't let them hit you," she said. "What do you suggest? Duel mother over soup? If necessary." He looked at her then, and for the first time she saw not a cousin but a mirror angled differently. Sirius' rebellion was loud where hers was precise, wounded where hers was furious, but it sprang from the same refusal to be made into a weapon by people who called ownership love. "I hate them," he whispered. "No," Bellatrix said. "Hate what they do, hate what they teach, hate the cages. But do not give them your whole heart, even in hatred. They will live there rent-free and redecorate." Sirius stared. "That is the strangest advice anyone has ever given me. It is also excellent." By spring, Lucius had tired of polite warnings. It happened in the Slytherin common room after a Quidditch victory, when the room was loud and hot with triumph. A second-year girl named Marlene, sorted into Slytherin despite having a Muggle father and no talent for hiding her accent, accidentally knocked over a silver inkstand near the hearth. Ink spilled over a roll of parchment belonging to a pure-blood 7th year. Voices rose. Someone said the word. Not muttered this time. Declared. The room went still. Bellatrix rose. Lucius, seated beneath the largest serpent carving, watched with faint amusement. Severus stood in the shadows, expression unreadable. He had not joined the laughter, but he had not challenged it either. Bellatrix knew that hunger in him, the desire to belong somewhere powerful enough that one could overlook the price of admission. She crossed the room and stood before the 7th year. "Apologize," she said. He scoffed. "To her? No. To everyone forced to listen to your lack of imagination." The older boy reached for his wand. Bellatrix was faster. Not with a curse. Not with anything forbidden. She used a neat, vicious little disarming charm that sent his wand spinning into the lake window, where it bounced off the glass and landed in a bowl of sugared plums. Laughter exploded, nervous and delighted. His face went red. "You blood traitor!" She stepped close enough that he backed into his chair. "There," she said softly. "That one is at least accurate." Lucius stood. "You make a spectacle of yourself." "No, Lucius. I reveal one. You think this rebellion makes you noble? I think your approval would make me ill." His wand appeared in his hand, as elegant as a threat in silk. Around the room, students froze. Bellatrix felt her pulse slow. This was the dangerous moment, the point at which reputation demanded payment in action. She could back down and become a curiosity, or stand and become a problem. She had been born to be a problem. Severus moved before she did. He did not stand beside her exactly. He shifted from shadow into lamplight, wand in hand, angled not at Lucius but not away from him either. His face was pale. Lily would later ask why he had done it, and Severus would answer with something unconvincing about disliking prefect arrogance. Bellatrix understood better. He had seen a door open and feared it closing. Lucius looked from one to the other. "You are choosing poorly," he said. Bellatrix smiled. "I am choosing." No duel followed. Lucius was too clever to risk defeat in front of witnesses. He lowered his wand, and the room exhaled. But something had changed. Not all at once. Not enough to transform Slytherin into a sanctuary. Yet after that night, certain words were spoken less freely when Bellatrix sat nearby. Certain students found seats waiting for them who had previously eaten alone. Certain pure-blood children began to discover that prejudice, when challenged by someone they feared, was not principle at all but cowardice wearing ancestral robes. And Bellatrix discovered something more dangerous than defiance: influence. By the time Andromeda arrived at Hogwarts, Bellatrix had already become a rumor large enough to frighten parents. Some said she had cursed a 7th year into speaking only compliments for a week. That was false. It had been 3 days, and the compliments had been accidental. Some said she had made a pact with the giant squid. That was insulting to both parties. Some said she had renounced the House of Black entirely, which was also false. Bellatrix had not renounced the name. She had stolen it back. Andromeda entered the great hall with the cautious grace of someone walking across a frozen lake. She looked smaller beneath the enchanted ceiling, though Bellatrix knew better than to mistake quiet for weakness. When the hat shouted Slytherin, the table applauded. Bellatrix applauded loudest, not because she cared where Andromeda had been placed, but because no sister of hers would walk into a room of snakes without hearing at least one roar. That night, Andromeda sat beside her in the common room and whispered, "They expect me to be like you." "No," Bellatrix said. "They expect you to explain me." "That may be worse." "It is. Refuse." Andromeda smiled faintly, but her hands twisted in her lap. I don't want to fight everyone." "Then don't. Fight only what must be fought. It saves time." For Andromeda, rebellion did not look like shattered goblets or public duels. It looked like sitting with a Hufflepuff girl whose mother sold flowers in a Muggle village. It looked like asking questions in history of magic that made old wars sound less glorious and more like graves. It looked like kindness deployed with such consistency that it exposed cruelty as effortful and ridiculous. Bellatrix admired it. She did not understand how to do it. Narcissa remained at home, sending letters full of carefully harmless observations. "Mother has changed the curtains in the blue room. Father says the ministry grows weak." Aunt Walburga visited and spoke of Sirius for 42 minutes, without once using his name kindly. "The peacocks at Malfoy Manor are apparently very grand." Between the lines, Narcissa wrote the truth. "I am lonely. I am listening. I am not yet brave." Bellatrix answered every letter. "Courage is not a family jewel. You needn't inherit it all at once." Winter came hard that year. Snow barricaded the castle windows, and the lake froze black near the shore. Students moved in clusters through the courtyards. Rumors grew darker. Beyond Hogwarts, a young wizard was gathering followers who spoke of purification as if murder were housekeeping. In the castle, older Slytherins began wearing little symbols under their cuffs. Serpents, skulls, marks that meant nothing officially and everything socially. Lucius had left school by then, but his influence remained like perfume and curtains. One February evening, Bellatrix found Andromeda cornered in the courtyard by three